So let's look at my book for a minute, page 71. So how many people read that one section that I asked you to read? Okay, so we're not into reading. I've got about 60 books here. Who can read anymore, right? So I listen to audiobooks, but I never made an audiobook of this one. I'm still thinking about it. So we have a tendency to think of, I'll use a trite phrase, creativity is like mom, baseball, and apple pie. It's unequivocally good. But I don't think so, not serious creativity. That you have to decide if you want to be creative, because a creative career is not easy. It means you're going to be, see how much of this I can put away. You might have a much easier career if you just do what the boss wants than if you do what you think is creatively valid. And there are many creative figures that were not treated well by the society. So I try to begin every chapter with a short summary of what it's all about. If you read this, you get the whole thing. In which we see that creativity implies destruction. The old must be swept away to make space for the new. You can't just keep accumulating stuff. We look at destruction in business, art, and science, and we revisit our examples of visionary creativity in cultural contexts and see how each also destroyed an older world. And we'll just talk briefly about that. So there are a few people that you get to know about, and you're very upset when they die. So one of them that a lot of people were upset about was Steve Jobs. And we think of all the things we won't have because his brilliant creativity is lost to us. He didn't talk that much, but he gave a graduation talk at Stanford, which you can find easily, and I highly recommend it. And he had already had a threatening illness, and then he died 6 years after this talk. Death is very likely the single best invention of life. It is life's change agent. That'll change you. It clears out the old to make way for the new. Right now, the new is you. I was talking to graduating students. But someday, not too long from now, you will gradually become the old and be cleared away. Sorry to be so dramatic, but it's quite true. So, one of my objections to what's going on in our culture today, when you see something like climate change, and people say, oh my God, there was a storm, or there was a flood, or there was snow, or a drought. We're being trained to think that peaceful, calm, stasis, things staying the same, is the norm. And any violent change is a sign of something wrong. I totally object to that. In terms of peace and prosperity, our world of the past few decades has been very exceptional. It's usually violent and chaotic. So we have been brainwashed not to realize how violently changing things are. So I begin. Creativity does not come free of cost. It comes with destruction. As we see in the Indian myths of Shiva, the destroyer of the world, following Brahma, the creator, and Vishnu, the preserver, in eternal cycles. So Indian mythology, which is a really good grasp of the churning eras of the world, has that fundamental in their mythology. So who can tell me who Oppenheimer was? He was in charge of creating the atomic bomb. He was head of the Manhattan Project to create the atomic bomb. He did the bomb. Other people did creating the fuel and stuff like that. And he was a very literate person, had studied Sanskrit. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the American physicist who was director of the Manhattan Project, had read the Bhagavad Gita, which is a key mystical Hindu text, in the original Sanskrit. And as he witnessed the first nuclear bomb test in 1945, the phrase, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds," from the epic poem, leapt into his mind. In India, the cycles of time are seen as real processes in the world, but also metaphorical, the processes in ourselves in which we seek to obliterate ego and negative attachments in order to allow new growth. So what are the processes whereby we grow, we learn new? So we have an aversion to destruction. So besides obvious self-preservation, our aversion to destruction comes in part from a misconception of the nature that we have come to think of as peaceful, stable, subject to gradual change. It's not true. Our universe began with a Big Bang, an event of inconceivable violence. Just a few decades ago, galaxies were thought to form in a slow condensation of gases and dust. Now we know that the process is violent, with massive black holes at the cores of galaxies swallowing billions of suns and emitting the light of trillions of suns. Galaxies grow through collision that shred structures and toss about stars. And we look at our sun. What is that? It's a continuously exploding hydrogen bomb. I mean, it's unbelievably violent. And stars are nothing less than continuously exploding hydrogen bombs. Stars are furnaces creating the heavier elements. And when they explode as supernova, they give off more light than entire galaxies, blowing these elements into the void to become material for the formation of new stars. And where was I here? New stars and star systems with heavy element planets. The formation of our planet was also violent. We believe the moon, our planet got hit by a planet the size of Mars, and it blew the moon out. The moon's rather recent. So anyway, the whole thing, I won't go on, but you can read it, is reality is incredibly violent. And I think that we deceive ourselves when we think of it as peaceful. We're told about climate change that things were like this for millions of years, and for the first time ever, we've thrown it out of balance. That's just so totally untrue. I went to school in New York, so we learn about the geography of New York. And one of the things we learned is that 10,000 years ago, that's not very long. That's only like 2.5 times as long as back as the pyramids. New York was under 2-mile thick sheet of ice. It was the Ice Age. And this glaciers had come down from the North Pole all the way down to right here the Empire State Building is only 1/4 mile. So imagine 4 times the height of the Empire State Building of solid ice. And then it retreated. So that's pretty violent, as that thing moved down and ground up everything under it. And we're due for another one in about 5,000 years, which isn't that long. So, with that introduction, and after we talk, maybe go back and reread this, because I think there's a lot here. Let's take a look at how we might apply this to creativity. So, discontinuity and destruction. And I keep referring back to this little paragraph on the cover of my book, because it really sums up the idea. Visionary creatives swim in the culture of their day and manifest in their work the spirit of the age. So there's a lot of ideas just in that sentence, that we don't live in reality, we live in a culture. And a culture is a symbolic way of interpreting reality. And it's different in different cultural periods. That's why different cultures are different. And so my first contention is that visionary creatives are highly sensitive to that fact, to that culture. The things they create. And now I make the point that talking about creativity, you don't have to just talk about art. You can talk about art, design, science, technology, business. Embody that culture, that spirit. At the same time, are a little off-center for us. Somehow not what we expected, presenting a discontinuity that stretches us, restructures our consciousness, pulling us into the future. So I'm going to talk about a couple different notions of destruction, and one of them is going to be discontinuity. So let's start with creative destruction. There's an economist named Schumpeter. It's a concept in economics in which for the new to happen, the old has to be swept away. Walmart swept away Sears Roebuck. Swept away five and dime store, Woolworths, swept away Toys R Us. And what's now happening to what's threatening Walmart? Amazon, correct. So in planned economies, there's a lot of people out there working for Walmart. It's the biggest employer in the United States. We don't want those people to lose their jobs. First of all, they vote. They're not going to be happy. And it's disruptive. What's going to happen to their families? So what if we forbid Amazon from getting any bigger to protect Walmart? What's the downside of that? But what does progress mean? That's just a word. Yeah, but it change. Why? You have to show that change has some value. Otherwise, maybe we should restrict it. Walmart gets us stuff that, well, Amazon gets us stuff that's cheap and convenient. Maybe we don't have time to go shopping. Shopping used to be, first of all, in California was ahead of New York. But before 1976 in New York, stores closed at 6 and they were closed on Sundays. Why was that not a problem?
Because everywhere else did the same.
Because your wife did the shopping. Men worked, wives shopped. So the wives are available all day, from 9 to 6. And everybody wants a day off and go to church on Sunday. So the idea that things were open unless it was a bank, they were open from 9 to 3. What is that? I don't get out of work till 5. I can't get there till 6.
So that's why everything's like that. Doctor's offices, the post office, everything has those standard hours that no one actually can utilize for the most part.
Well, it used to be that way. Now everything's open till 10. All the grocery stores are open 7 days a week till 10.
But like doctor's offices and like the post office and like things that you have to do are like really during your work hours. It's like
well, the post office because it's the government. Mm-hmm. See how late FedEx Kinko's open. But so when we might think, well, why shouldn't we protect things the way they are? Change is going to be disruptive. It's going to hurt some people. But we're not aware of who's being hurt by the way it is. Like, women can't work because they have to shop. They have to cook the meal. Has anybody used Uber Eats? How is it? Does it work? So now we have China, used to be, if you want to deliver, you had a choice between pizza and Chinese. Now you can get anything. So, maybe people should spend more time cooking and save money, but maybe people are busy pursuing careers. God forbid women should be allowed to have a career, which means maybe they want to shop on Amazon at 2 in the morning. So Schumpeter's creative destruction is a process of industrial mutation that has increasingly revolutionized the economic structure from within. It's the sweeping away of an older industry which is important because it makes way for the new. So the big three in automobiles, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. Ford did not go bankrupt. Chrysler and General Motors did. The government saved them. It shouldn't have. People didn't want those cars. The Japanese and Koreans and Germans have figured out how to make cars people want. Why should we? And then you say, well, we've got to protect those jobs. Well, Toyotas are made in the United States. Most of the ones we buy. It's just not made by General Motors. It's made by people who are in tune with, sensitive to what people want now. So if you think about it, the way I like to put it is General Motors puts a computer in their car. Tesla puts wheels on its computer. They look similar. They're totally different things. And when I say that, I then modify it. How do I modify it? Tesla makes a car to contain its software. Tesla's real product is its software. They just temporarily put it in the car. And it's General Motors is going to make an electric car. It's not going to be anything like a Tesla because those people can't think that way. And then you say, remember, already in the 70s, auto workers started to be disruptive. And you had all these union member, old line Detroit auto workers that had been working for the big three for decades, losing their jobs. They're very high-paying jobs. So, well, they should be retrained as software engineers. You can't do that. You have to grow up as a software engineer. You don't learn it. I asked you guys once before, how many people here have had a course in word processing?
Does that mean typing?
There's a lot of stuff in word processing. How do you set up a template? How do you, determine, how do you create an outline which can expand into the article and then jump back to the outline? I took a course in all that. But what they've done is you don't really have to do that stuff because the stuff you can do intuitively is as much as you need. But if you're going to be in charge of word processing in an office, you really have to be Microsoft certified. But you said, isn't it just typing? How do you open a document? How do you save a document? How do you reformat it? You want to go from 12 point to 14 point. Well, we can all do that stuff. You don't need a course for that. How you make an outline, how do you create different, a number 1, number 2, number 3, 4 heading, create an outline, make the article shrink to the outline so you can change things and then expand again. That you don't know without a course. So, number 1, creative destruction. It's when whole industries are swept away to make way for new industries. And if government intervenes to protect the old industries, in the long run, people lose out. Sure, I'll tell you, before about 1970, discount stores were illegal in New York. Things had to be sold for the manufacturer's list price. So let's say GE made a portable transistor radio. They say the list price is $40. It's illegal for anybody to sell it less than $40. Well, that's what Walmart is a discount store. They can sell it for less because they do big volume, and they're very careful about their supply chain. Think about it. Here's one of the things Walmart does. Imagine they're selling laundry detergent, Tide. So, there's a factory. Procter & Gamble has a factory. They make Tide. They put it in jugs. They send it to a warehouse. Walmart buys 1,000 jugs. Trucks take it from the Procter & Gamble warehouse to the Walmart warehouse. Then they take 200 of them to the local Walmart. They put them in back on the shelf, and in inventory in the back. And they put 10 of them on the shelf. And then half of those get sold. They bring more out and put them on the shelf. Does that make sense? How about the truck picks it up at Procter & Gamble, takes it to the store, and they put it on the shelf? You just eliminated 2 warehouses, the inventory in the back of the store, and 4 steps of moving jugs. Walmart did 2 more things with Tide. Anybody know what they are? Number 1, they made the jugs more square so they could pack more of them in to the truck or the warehouse. And they did one other thing. What would you do to get more Tide in less space? You used to put a cup of Tide in your laundry. Now you put a quarter of a cup in. They got rid of 3/4 of the water. Why are we hauling all this water around? Everybody has it at home. You got plenty of water in your house. So suddenly that jug has 4 times as much cleaning power because you only use a quarter cup instead of a full cup. So Walmart is always thinking of every place where they can save a penny. You save 1,000 pennies, you suddenly save the customer $10. So we all benefit from that. Everything we get is cheaper. So there's been a problem that wages have been stagnant. But what does a pair of jeans cost at Walmart? $12 to $20. What did a pair of jeans cost in 1960? $12 to $20. But inflation has been tenfold since then. So the cost of clothes has come down 90%. The cost of food has come down 50%. Due to all these efficiencies that these retailers and manufacturers have been struggling to achieve. If you ban those activities, the customer pays. Okay, that's creative destruction, the sweeping away of old industries to make way for new. Disruptive innovation. This is related but different. The idea was put forward by an economist named Clayton Christensen. Disruptive innovation So not every new technology is a disruptive innovation. What Christensen is talking about, a particular kind of thing. So I'll go back and do it in some detail. But let's say this is the, Jesus, why can't they make a blackboard that works? This is the this is the power of a workstation. It's a performance per dollar. I'll talk about it. It's a type of computer. This is a PC. So, the early PCs are small, very underpowered, and can't do anything. Mostly you do things like write little programs, but draw a circle. So, the manufacturers of the workstation look at the PCs, and some people say, hey, you guys should be making PCs. And they say, let's go down the list. We sell these PCs assigned for $2,000. We sell our things for $20,000. We have customers clamoring for the next generation of our computers. And they'll pay anything for them. If you're making movies and you're rendering frames per second in CGI, you don't care what it costs. Something will render them twice as fast. Instead of taking a month to do a scene in Tron, you can do it in a week. You're paying for a $40,000 computer to do that. You have no interest in a $2,000 PC that can write a letter. But what's the PC? Let's put the PC down here. Well, the PC is doing this. The PC is dependent on the central processing chip. That's made by Intel. And Intel's selling a lot of these things. So they have a lot of money. And they can keep doing research to make that chip more and more capable, more and more power for the same money. So the thing's sneaking along like this. And one day, it does that. 20 major computer companies go out of business next week. Because why should I pay $40,000 for their computer when the PC can do the same thing for $2,000? That's a disruptive technology. It's a crummy, toy-like, inefficient process that makes a crummy product, but keeps getting better. Sneaks up on you, and suddenly you're out of business. If you're the taxi cab industry, and I call up my friend Elaine, who's got a limo company. Say, Elaine, I got to get to the airport on Thursday. Can you have, and she knows where I live. She knows where the service entrance is. She's got reliable drivers. Say, Elaine, I want to be picked up at 6 in the morning to go to LaGuardia Airport next Thursday. $80. I don't care. I'm billing my boss. And I have to be there. If the limo driver gets lost and can't, I live in a weird place. And people can't, Waterside Plaza, people can't find it. The taxi industry is not worried about that. because how often am I going to spend $80 for a limo? You know, when I once in 2 months when I travel. But what would make me do that more often?
It was more affordable.
More affordable, and how reliable is that? I can watch the Uber driver on my phone. Whoa, he's coming around the corner. Okay, I should be able to see him now. I'll step off the curb and wave. So now the taxi industry is suddenly in trouble. Big trouble. The value of a medallion just dropped from $1 million to $500,000. So the yellow cab industry just lost half their value, just like that. Now, limos that you call have been around forever, but they suddenly got a lot better when you could call them on your, not a week in advance, but 5 minutes in advance while you're standing there from your cell phone with an app. So that's a disruptive innovation. So computers went from mainframes to minis to graphic workstations to PCs, and now, for the past roughly 5 years, every year they sell less PCs, desktops and laptops. They sell less. Why is that? Right, we need laptops for our schoolwork, but most people just want to browse the internet, watch a YouTube, buy something on Amazon, send an email, send an instant message. That's 99% of what most people do. And you can do that on your phone, which is free. You already have a phone. You got it for phone calls. So suddenly, everything, not us, because we're doing schoolwork, but everything that most people do suddenly can be done on a smartphone. So first there were mainframes. Then in the 80s, minis came along. So minis are the size of these 3 tables. And they were not as powerful as mainframes, but for a school like Pratt, we didn't need a mainframe, and we needed to do graphics and computer science and programming, and minis could do all that, and one mini could support 40 different terminals, 40 people working at the same time. So we got a VAX mini, and then graphic workstations came along. A graphic workstation is like today a desktop PC. But the thing is, there were PCs, but they were not a threat to the high-end computer industry. But then people started making things like PCs, but they had powerful graphics capability, which is now built into all computers, but it was just in graphic workstations. And so you didn't need a mini anymore. Instead of a $250,000 mini, a $20,000 graphic workstation could do the job. And then PCs got graphic capabilities, and all the graphic workstation companies went out of business. So if you want to do heavy-duty graphic works, did anybody ever have fun of going to Apple's website and outfitting a high-end desktop? How much does it cost?
You could spend thousands, grand, easy.
I think it's $20,000.
Yeah. Oh, I've never done that full.
Okay, if you get 64, let's just see here. So you don't need, office computers anymore, because your desktop, you can make it as powerful as you want. So go to Safari, go to Apple. Oh, by the way, if you go to apple.com, yesterday they announced all the new stuff. So Apple TV, they have their own credit card now. Apple TV is greatly improved. They have a suite of games, etc. So let's go to Mac. Let's get an iMac Pro. They're about to bring a new Mac Pro, but even an iMac Pro.
They're crazy expensive, even just baseline.
Well, yeah, right, because it's got all the stuff. So I want to buy it. You get it, like I think my computer right here has a 2 or 4 core chip. You can get 18 core. No, that's not a typo. So let's, oh, here we go, buy. So, $5,000. Now let's get started. Let's get an 18-core CPU. We're up to $7,000. Sorry. Let's go for 256 gig. That's the disk on this, just for the memory. Now we're up to 12,000. And then one more thing, a high-end graphics chip. Oh, it's only at $7,000. The Radeon Pro 64X, 16 gig of memory. We're up to 13.2. And then we don't want to get that much hard disk because those are external anyway. We want to get a RAID, 6 external hard disks. Oh, they're giving us the mouse free. Let's skip the final, trading. So wait a minute, where's the graphic processor? Oh, I got that, the graphic processor. Okay, so 13,300. So you know why do I need a? You can outfit your desktop to be a pretty heavy-duty computer. So when I worked in architectural offices, there was a typing pool. There was 2 people because there's a 40-person office. But you have the typewriter, and then the electric typewriter. That was not disruptive. The same companies that made the mechanical typewriter made the electric typewriter. Before the word processor, there was one more step, the electronic typewriter. That started to be, it had memory. So you didn't have to white stuff out. You could go in there, make changes. It was kind of hard to use. So then we got word processors. They were standalone. The big desk was the word processor. Now word processing software comes. You get it in your computer, Microsoft Word. Now, this whole process really was not disruptive. In other words, the people in the typing pool had typewriters. Then they got electric typewriters. Then they got word processors. And suddenly the typing pool was gone. What happened? So let's say it's a legal firm. I write a memo with a pen, and I give it to my secretary, and she takes it to the typing pool, gets the letter typed. I go over it and mark it up. They retype it. So even though they have a word processor, There's still a typing pool.
A typing pool is a group of people like,
Who type.
Okay.
If you have a 50 to 100 people office, the execs are not going to type. Men don't type. So if you want to send a letter, your secretary could type it, or your secretary's too busy, helping you run the business. She takes it to the typing pool, and there are people who just type all day. Why don't we do that anymore? Because if I want to send you a letter, I don't write it and it goes to the typing pool. I email it to you. So it eliminates the whole thing. So network computer with email. So I can't email unless I'm on a network. So once you have network computers and you have email, and that's all new. If you go back, let me think. Terrible on dates. But say 1990, you could only email people who were part of the same system you were. So if you're on AOL, you could email anybody on AOL. If you're on Genie, you could email anybody on Genie. If you're very busy, you had to be on 2 or 3 of them. But then they made it possible to get from AOL to Genie to Mac. And that's email as we understand it today. So at that point, typewriters disappear, electric typewriters disappear, typing pools disappear. So that's disruptive innovation. And the biggest disruptive innovator in recent times has been the smartphone. Think of all the businesses that have been put out of business. How many people own a GPS navigator? It comes free with your phone. Why would you buy one? How many people own a camera? It comes free with your phone unless you're a professional photographer. Why would you buy one? What else? How many people own a radio? Comes free. Yeah, radio.
Yeah, I do.
How many people own a stereo system? Do you play tapes and records, or you plug your phone in?
It's tapes and the CD.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's an antique. So for $12 a month, you can get Apple Unlimited Music, plug it into your stereo, and just about anything ever recorded is available for $12 a month. Why would you own or buy CDs or tapes? You've got, not on your phone, but linked to your phone, everything that's ever been recorded, whether it's Spotify or Pandora or iTunes, whichever one you use. So one by one, you see all of these industries and technologies being done away with by the phone. So it's a major disruptive innovation. So go listen to the Tim Cook present all the new Apple stuff. The whole presentation was on services. So one of them is Apple News. So for Apple News Plus, $10 a month, you get 300 magazines, 4 newspapers, thousands of articles. I mean, you get the Wall Street Journal. The Wall Street Journal is $15 a month. You get it for $9 a month with 300 other magazines. And how long those magazines are going to be in business? First of all, there's no place to buy them. Barnes & Noble is about the only place left that has a comprehensive magazine selection. So they're all online. Okay, one more. And maybe we'll get out early, but let's finish up. Discontinuity. Can anybody define art? Who would like to try to, what's art? What is art? How would you define art? Visual. Is music art?
Yeah.
Okay. So visual and. Okay, now I'm looking at this table. That's visual. Is this table art? And what would make it so?
Yeah.
So we traditionally define art in terms of beauty, but that's not a good definition. There are plenty of things that are beautiful that are not art. Yeah, I can say a sunset could be beautiful, it's not art. And there are plenty of art that's ugly, like Goya, Disasters of War. So it's not beauty. So I'm going to introduce an idea, and this is a guy named Morse Peckham, Morse Peckham, Morse Peckham. And he defines art as, first of all, art is that which gives you an art experience. So the trick is, it's got nothing to do with the object. Any object that gives, it's not a quality of the object. Any object that gives you an art experience is art. Of course, we now have to define art experience. But it also helps because you get people say, that's not art to me. Yeah, maybe it gives you an art experience, but it doesn't give me an art experience. So we've got, we say art is that which gives us an art experience. And now we have to define art experience. So art experience is one in which we experience a discontinuity. And we're going to define discontinuity as follows. You come to a situation expecting something. If you do not encounter that, you do one of two things. You cover it up. You don't perceive what you did not expect. It's so off your radar, you just don't have the perceptual apparatus to perceive it. Or you're open to a discontinuity. You're open to, whoa! And then there are several different types of discontinuity. Internal discontinuities, in which something in the work is not what you anticipated. Stylistic discontinuity, which we see in the history of art, I'll show you in a minute, and contextual discontinuity. So here's one for you. 1971, the Whitney Museum had a major exhibit of quilts. Everybody know what a quilt is? So quilts are typically created by women, often in social gatherings, made up of scraps of leftover cloth to create interesting patterns. Okay? Everybody have a picture? Now, let's just jump to something here. So here are some quilts. All that look familiar? But look at how you start looking at these for a while, and you see there's a lot of thought going on in the creation of these patterns, and then the choosing of the colors and how they relate. Some are very disciplined. Some of them look kind of random. So this probably exists in many cultures, but American women were typically doing this in the late 19th, early 20th century, and they got too busy. But this was not art. Why wasn't it art? What two things made it not art?
It was functional.
It was functional. Okay, three things. It's functional. It was done by women. They don't count. And it was in the home. It was not in an art gallery. So to be art, it's got to be in an art gallery or museum, right? So these things were created. Somebody got interested and went around like Pennsylvania and Ohio farm country, where this was typically done, and knocked on doors, and people went through their attics, and they bought these quilts, hundreds of them. They then selected really interesting ones, and they had a major show in a major museum, the Whitney Museum. Now what? Suddenly they became art. And it was admitted that the graphic qualities of these things were the equal of what the men were doing in modern abstract art. Look at this one. Look at how these triangles suddenly break down to smaller triangles. And look at how that blends in with the larger triangles. Now take a look at this. Does that remind you of anything? When Frank Stella does it, it goes for a couple $1 million. When a woman in Pennsylvania does it 50 years earlier than Frank Stella, it's a quilt. So, art is in part determined by context. And then when context is pulled out from under us, contextual discontinuities in which we encounter a work of art outside of the environment in which we would expect it, as in the sophisticated late 19th and early 20th century quilts by American women that were put in bedrooms rather than art galleries, and then exhibited in the Whitney Museum in 1971. So let's look at some stylistic discontinuity, and we could do the whole history of art now. So here's Monet, Rouen Cathedral, Impressionism, and that was very controversial. People finally got used to it, said, fine, we're happy with that. And what did Cézanne do? He did that. So Cézanne said, I want to return to the solidity of the art of the museums. He rejected this fuzzy light coming off of the object and wanted to go back to the objects. And so then say, okay, I get it. I'm readjusting my anticipations. And then what happened? I'm jumping ahead, but Cubism comes along. Then you say, okay, that's a bit disturbing. This thing looks like it's exploding, but I'm getting used to it. Then what happened? Okay, I get it. These data artists are questioning everything. It's kind of fun. Of course, Duchamp is French, so that's sophisticated right there. And I accept that. And of course, I'm jumping again, but then what happened? Wait a minute. That's not art. That's a stupid soup can. And then, oh yeah, try to buy one. They now go for millions of dollars. So science fiction movies were kind of cheesy. And then what was the first seriously taken science fiction movie? Anybody know? Forbidden Planet with Robbie the Robot. And then what came next? It set the benchmark. 2001. So it's in most people's top 10 movies of all time. So it's a mythopoetic exploration of the origin of our humanness. Okay, I can relate to that. Science fiction is mythopoetic. And then what happened? Sword and ray gun space adventure. Star Wars. Say, okay, I get it. I can relate to that. And then comes AI. How many people have seen AI? Stanley Kubrick. Strongly recommended. It's, spoiler alert, but it's in the future they can make convincing android robots. And this couple and their child doesn't die, but they're sure he's going to die. He's in a coma from an accident. And the mother's heartbroken. The father gets a little robot boy. And it's a new generation of robots. It's capable of emotions. It's capable of love. So the robot boy falls in love with the mother, and the real child recovers from his coma. Now what? And so now this boy it's a Pinocchio story. This boy is thrown out into these some unpleasant adventures, and then has this very satisfying experience at the end. So, okay, so that's science fiction as exploration of the emotional depths of human beings. And then it gets, anybody seen District 9? Really ugly. Aliens come, they're stuck here, their technology breaks down. It's how are we treating them? It's a comment on apartheid societies. So, in each case, each of these movies, each of these art forms, each of these movies, we come to an expectation of what we're going to get. And besides, good acting and good plots and good cinematic production, what these great movies do is totally wrench us into totally new worlds. So, and in so doing, destroy the old ones. So creativity can come with destruction. So, any questions about destruction? Okay, I'm going to take a couple minutes to show you a couple things in the reading, and we'll take off a bit early. Let me stop the recording before I crash it. No, let's keep recording. Let me go back to my reading. So, let me turn that light off. Destruction is as inherent to nature as is creation, and then equally inherent for us. And then in business, art, science, in the human realm, creation happens within the context of destruction. So first, in business, we look at creative destruction, as described by Joseph Schumpeter, and that is old industries have to be swept aside for new industries to have open space in which to develop. Digital technologies give lots of examples. Digital photography destroyed the film industry, and then cell phones has destroyed the camera industry. Canon is really in trouble. Canon and Nikon make the best cameras. Sony now makes good cameras too. But that whole industry is in trouble. Free market economies permit creative destruction and thrive as new industries are born. Planned economies thwart it by protecting outmoded industries, thereby suppressing the rise of new industries, and they stagnate. So we can protect people from the damage of destruction of industries, but it's at the price of the prosperity that the new would have brought. A while ago, years ago, in the late 70s, Argentina banned the import of computers. So they said, we want our own computer industry to flower. I mean, from today's perspective, you realize how dumb that is. You know, you think you can make computers as good as the Chinese, Americans, and Koreans? I mean, forget it. It takes billions of dollars and focus to do that. This is a real surprise for you. How many people have seen any of the Lord of the Rings movies? Okay, I think maybe I should make a list of required movies. We got 2 people here who have seen them. They are among the visually most spectacular movies ever, rich in landscape and, well, great storytelling, but then rich in landscape and CGI. They were made in New Zealand. Where'd they get the industry to do that? I mean, you can see it happening in California where they've got, you want to hire computer graphics artists, you can hire them from Stanford, Berkeley, UCLA, University of Southern California, Caltech, and that's just, on and on and on. They're breeding grounds for the people you would need. How'd they do that in? I mean, New Zealand's smaller than New Jersey in population. They got great mountains. Well, they did it. It was incredible. Okay, a related concept is disruptive innovation. And for example, the electric typewriter was not disruptive. It was just convenient. You still had typing pools. The boss still wrote it with a pen. The secretary typed it on an electric typewriter instead of a manual typewriter. And the people who made the electric typewriters are the same people who made the manual typewriters. So, but then the word processor was a disruptive innovation. It changed everything. Nobody makes typewriters anymore. I think maybe Brother does. It used to be, when I did my taxes, there's a form you have to send people that you type up. I think it's 1099, had to be typed. And so at the bottom of my closet, I'd pull out this typewriter once a year to type these 3 forms to the people I paid more than $600. That was, fortunately, you don't need to do that anymore. So that was it. They're gone. And the typing pool's gone. So everybody writes their own email and clicks a button. The mailroom's gone. It allowed executives to do their own typing, allowed documents to be stored, transmitted digitally, thus totally changing the nature of documents and business communications. A disruptive innovation totally transforms a field and thereby destroys companies. Now, one of the things that is true, we might have expected typewriter companies to find new lives making computer printers, but they didn't. It almost never happens. When a new technology comes along, the companies that are doing something similar should have a big advantage to jump in. For example, every single thing Facebook does, you could do on AOL 20 years ago. AOL just didn't get it. Yahoo could have created Google. They didn't get it. So interestingly, when these new technologies come along, it's typically new businesses that do it rather than people who are already in the business. So for example, there's a big limo company in New York called Carmel. You see their commercials on TV, 666, 6666. Why didn't they do an app? Why didn't they become Uber? Uber came out of nowhere, was not a limo company. And that's the way it is. just the new industry is a totally new way of thinking. Like what I said before, Tesla does not make automobiles. They make computers and put wheels on them. General Motors can't do that. They're an automobile company. So if you want to look at it here, I described how we went from mainframes to minis to workstations to PCs. And why, in each case, the existing company didn't make the new technology. IBM should have been making minis. They knew more about computers than anybody. Digital Equipment Corp should have been making workstations. They didn't. The workstation companies should have made PCs. They didn't. And I describe why. So in art, when a new style comes along, it's typically a whole new generation of artists who regard the existing artists as old fogies and sweep them away. So one more thing, and then we'll, and that is, earlier in the book, I looked at a series of examples in cultural context. So Galileo's putting the sun in the center of the solar system. And I looked at that. I looked at Beethoven's Third Symphony and looked at it in the context of Romanticism. Van Gogh's Starry Night in the context of 19th century fields. Here, I look at them again and see how they destroyed and swept away the preceding art. So if you look at the reading, that's what it goes into. So, any thoughts about art, creativity, and destruction?